Peter and I hadn't expected quite so many of you, so that's why we're looking a little bit white and ashen. We're going to split you into two groups, okay? One group's going to go with Peter. We're going to cover the same ground, but we're going to go a different way round so that we're not tripping over each other. And then when we get halfway round, there'll be a battle, all right? That's how we're going to do it. If you feel you have to wander off, please do wander off, and we'll do our best to give you the information you need. And you can always come back and have a look at in more detail in the town hall. And I would point out that there is actually more detail in the town hall. Our purpose is to go around and point at buildings. That's what we're going to do mainly this morning, and just give you a little bit of information relating to the auction.
So most of you were in the talk this morning, I presume. As you'll see, and you heard, and you've seen more before anyway, the shambles. This was built by the Duke of Devonshire. And next time you go to the town hall, if you walk along the corridor towards the exhibition, on the left-hand side, you'll see a map that was produced for the Duke of Devonshire, who 10 years before he sold the place was thinking of making it better and bigger. And as you heard, he built 3, maybe 4 lots of buildings to make it better. And this is the shambles, which, as you heard, was open every Thursday on market day. 10 lots of butcher shop. Well, they weren't shops. They slaughtered them and they sold the bits of meat to people. It's very misleading because you see this bit up here and you think it was built in George V's reign. The shambles was in the final lot of the sale. And it wasn't sold separately. It was sold as part of the manorship of Wetherby, which you heard about. And the manorship of Wetherby consisted of owning the shambles and getting the rents for that, but also owning the market, which continues to this day, which doesn't sound much, but actually you got all the fees from the market. So that was sold then. It was bought by somebody and then immediately sold to Richard Fontaine Wilson, who lived at Ingmansthorpe Hall and owned all the land, a lot of the land on the Ainston estate. Sorry, going back, this is the white, that building there, we'll go around the front, that's the White Hart Yard. Now, you notice how steep the roofs are. If you see a steep roof, it usually means it's thatched. And almost certainly that's thatched. In the Great Fire, and every town has its Great Fire, doesn't it? In the Great Fire in 1723, these buildings here were the only ones left, or a few of the buildings that were left. Most of Wetherby was burned down due to the usual problem of candles falling over, etc.
What year was that?
1723. 101 years before the Great Sale. But those were left. And those buildings were built, the White Hart was I can't remember if it was a pub or an inn or whatever, it wasn't a coaching place. And it was built by William Webster, who was the landlord of the White Hart. It included cottages. There was a little cottage on this corner here. It included that. Lane, what is now Bank Street, was originally called Back Lane because, as you know, every village has its high street and its back street, Back Lane. But in Victorian times, the bank was built on the corner and they decided to make it sound a bit posher to Back Lane. It was bought by Thomas Whitehouse, the occupier of the shop and town. Angel Inn. The Angel Inn was it was lot number 7 and sold for £2,016. There's a large brick house, 5 rooms. It was stretched all the way back. And it was the Premier Coaching Inn, as I say. It was bought by somebody called John Greenwood, who lived in Keighley. He was a cotton spinner, and he bought it really as an investment. His family was the most prosperous family in Keighley, and much of the property in Wetherby was bought by outsiders, but he was the principal one. And he was having about his father's founded the firm in Keighley. He did very well from it, lived in a very big house there, and they were on the sort of the journey from, you know, working their way up to being landowners. That's what I'm trying, and the industrious becoming a landowner.
Social climbers.
Well, you know, you didn't want to be trade, you wanted to be property owning, didn't you? A landowner. So this is part of it. He bought this, he didn't want to live in it, it was just an investment. It was actually, it continued to be let to the landlord, one John Clemenshaw. Oh, it'll be interesting further on because we bought Clemenshaw, also bought Swan and Talbot. So at one stage he owned both the coaching inns, weirdly enough. But Swan and Talbot is the older of the two coaching inns. It's older than the Angel. It was first licensed in 1678, but it's a lot older than that. Again, it's pure coaching inn, and it carried the coat of arms of the Swan family who lived in Askham Manor. A Talbot's the name of the dog. But Talbot is also the family name of the Countess of Shrewsbury, Earl of Shrewsbury. In other words, Bess of Hardwick's married surname was Talbot. And we think it might well have been for that reason that it became Swan and Talbot.
Do you know how far back this lot went? If it had all
They all go. Sorry, I forgot to say that to you. On both this and the Angel.
Yeah, I mean with the Angel I know because of the catalogue.
It all went a long way back, and many of the fields nearby were owned or rented by the landlords for keeping their horses on. So it was quite a significant thing. It had a soldier's room in here, as they all do, and as I say, this posting inn was bought by John Clemenshaw, the landlord of the Swan. So at one stage he owned both. And it sold for £1,510. Vic said the manor house was sold as part of the Swan and Talbot lot. It's called the manor house, but let's be clear, it was not a lady of the manor place. It was really the estate office. And the gardens and so on, you go into the church. Remember, the church wasn't built until 1840. So the ground went all the way back, and the wall around it was built. If you go into the church this way, is round the garden of this house. There was a chicane through there because where the garden of rest is now, it's stuck all the way across. And there was a building there. It was originally a dwelling house at the time of the sale. Subsequently was a pub called the Bowling Green Inn, and it was knocked down in the 1920s to widen the road, and that's why it's so wide at that particular stage. And the high street, you can see there was a sharp bend. There's the Swan. Look, there's the Swan.
The Angel.
It was originally the Blue Anchor Public House, Lot 24. Small tenement with just a small garden. It was called the Blue Anchor. Anchor coming from the word answer, which was the name given to gin barons. And it was bought by Widow Dawson, who was the landowner. So as you'll see, many of the pubs were bought by the landlords, who presumably were relatively wealthy. To me, it's still the Brunswick, but it was the Devonshire Arms, which was newly built and is described in the auction catalogue as a substantial new stone-built house, but it was again a pub or whatever. At the time of the sale, it was unoccupied. Now, I'm not sure whether that's because it was brand new or whether it had never been occupied since it had been built. It had been very recently built. 3 floors, as you can see, 3 floors. The first floor is a large room, often used as an assembly room, because there was no know, the Jordans, remember your Pride and Prejudice, they loved rolling up the carpet and dancing. There was no, at the time, there was no, the town hall wasn't there, it was now got an assembly room on where they left. So that large room there was used as an assembly. Next to it, and we'll walk up and see it when this crowd of people who are standing around, milling around up there move on. They also built stables. In fact, we'll walk on. You can see there were two places to put coaches or wagons in. Very nice. The Devonshire Arms was bought, in fact, was lot 8, sold for £2,010 and was bought by Mrs. Hargreave of Wetherby. Don't know who she was, don't know what she did. Now opposite it, we're now in, as you know, Victoria Street was called New Street, the reason that it was new. These were sort of very, middle class sort of houses at the time, newly built. Fascinating bit was, see it up there. See the one. You'll see most the downpipes from the roofs go down, and the water goes off the pavement and into the street. Can you see? Everyone see that?
Yeah.
And originally they were covered with wood, because if you look up at that one over there, the wood is still covering. You can see the black wood. Covering it. Now, most of them have not been replaced, unfortunately. They're 2-bedroom houses. People often say, there's blocked-in windows because of window tax. No. They've done that for symmetry, so you get a regular pattern on it. They were sold in, basically in pairs, and they average £300 per pair of buildings. Of the 23 houses, only, despite what Vic told you, only 6 were bought by the occupiers. 11 of them were bought by John Greenwood, who I told you about, who bought the Angel Inn. They were really, as I say, at the time of their time, they were quite nice rented buildings. One of the ladies who lives in them told me she's still got the original deeds from the original sale. What she lives in one of the ones that was bought by Greenwood. On the other side of the road there is the Crown, and as you heard this morning, the land of the Crown ran all the way back to the High Street. Ground floor, 2 parlours, etc., etc. Pig coats, a 7-stall stable, granary over. The number of horses here was quite amazing. I mean, it wasn't a coaching inn, so quite why I don't know. And another stable with a malt room over it. And they were bought by the Widow Smith, she's described as. Widow Smith, who was the occupier. I don't know if you know, these are for sale, these copies of it. And in there are annotations telling you who bought it. So there's Mr. Greenwood bought it. £370 for lot 88, which is one of these houses.
So you're one of the owners of one of the properties here, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
In the lots, it's lot 88.
Yeah.
And it was sold with next door.
Yeah. As pairs.
As a pair of houses.
Yeah.
And because we know the layout of inside the house, behind what looks like a blocked-in window from the street, is actually 2 large alcove wardrobes that go over the top of the staircase.
Right.
So it's possible that was a way through, so that the double unit house could be used in different ways, as in Widow Wiggins living downstairs by herself in my house, but perhaps next door the people use the upstairs as well as
their own half. Yeah.
Because it was let, it could be used in different ways.
Yeah. So the ways through between the two.
Yes.
Yeah. How interesting.
And
you've still got the original deeds.
I have got an original, what they called an indenture in those days.
Yeah.
But I was explaining to another chap there, I did the wrong thing. I had a double-sided glass to hang on my wall,
Yeah.
and as a result, the vast majority of it has faded.
Oh,
badly.
on the on one side.
And
Yeah.
so I got the back of it with the seal on it
Yeah.
and so on. But that's
Yeah.
as it is. It's a big sheet like this.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. Shall we rejoin them then?
So, Olivia Grace up there, that was the Three Masons' Arm at the time of the sales. And it was sold with the adjoining building, a substantial dwelling house, with 7 bed chambers, convenient yard for a wash house, etc. etc. Pig coach. It's amazing all the bits they had in them when you look at it. A building in Scotch Yard, a garden in Scots Lane, stable cow, blah 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 blah. And that was bought by Mrs. Tiplady, again, who was the landlady. And just reading the note here, one of the problems was that everyone got carried away at this auction, and subsequently they realised after a number of them had overspent and had trouble paying for it.
Thank you very much for that walking tour. Very entertaining.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Ian, if I have a quick chat.
No, mine
You've
is
done
fine.
loads of work behind the scenes, haven't you?
I've tried to do my best.
Yeah. But you've also done visits to schools, haven't you?
Yeah, I was talking to my grandson's class on Thursday.
Yeah, St
I
Joseph's.
didn't do much talking because they asked so many questions. I hadn't time to tell them anything.
Yeah, well, that was year 6 on it at St Joseph's. Yeah. Anne said that they'd been really entertained by you. Yeah, lots of questions.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yes. Yeah. Tell us about that process of producing the catalogue. Then you went to where did you go to have the catalogue reproduced?
To get the catalogue reproduced, well, we found a pristine copy of it, and we were allowed to borrow it.
Yeah.
We took it to the British Library, and they have state-of-the-art and beyond scanning machines.
Yeah.
And they scanned it for us, and it's got, I think it's, you're a techie, 350 megabytes per
Image. Wow. Yeah.
image.
Yeah.
And then each page is a separate image, and each map is a separate image.
Yeah.
So it's a huge file.
Yeah.
But the detail is above and beyond anything you could do on a home PC.
Yeah. And it's a great source material, isn't it?
It is. It's, well, you know, if you think modern television programmes, you see people doing archaeology, and they scratch about in the bottom of a trench and find a few stones and a bit of pottery, and then an expert comes in and says, it might be a barn or it could be a chapel.
A lot of assumption, isn't there?
Yeah, we've got the map of Wetherby town centre, and every single building is listed, right down to the pig cote and dove cote, the number of stables they've got, whether it's got a granary above it or not. inside all the hotels, a lot of them have soldiers' rooms,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
puzzled us. But
That would be a pretty basic place to sleep overnight,
yeah,
would it?
I think what is it, in 1824, no trains, there's no cars and buses.
Yeah.
So the soldiers must have marched up and down the road.
Yeah, yeah. Even at the First World War, they were still doing that, weren't they? For the troops that were stationed here.
At the end of the day, literally, they went into a pub and there was a room down, kept down for the night,
Yeah.
probably had a pint or two and then got up next morning.
March on. Yeah. But what a record, isn't it, of the land use? You get the land use recorded and the estate use.
Unique.
Yeah.
I haven't done any research on it. I don't know. Do you know of any town?
Of a whole town. I asked Vic that in the presentation, and he was unaware of any others. That such an extent, and that catalogue detail must have taken months for somebody to put together.
Well, he actually owned the town.
Yeah.
So I guess his solicitors would have a bit few details for the properties they were renting out.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they had to pull it all together and take the measurements.
Yeah.
And I know I'm old and grumpy, and I've forgotten all that we ever learnt at school. I remember school exercise books. On the back you had the times table, and then you had rods, poles and perches, and
Yeah.
all sorts of old measurements.
Yeah.
And all the measurements for the sales category were rods, poles and perches.
Yeah, and who did all that surveying? I know the Ordnance Survey was in its infancy then. It was ordnanced by troops, wasn't it? It's troops that did the measuring.
Yeah.
So, quite an exercise just to carry that out.
Vast amount of work went into it.
Yeah. It was interesting about how many corn mills there were.
Yeah, there were 3 of them,
But something like
from,
that. Yeah.
from memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were
And how
3.
important they were for the
And
map.
there were all sorts of other buildings in town.
And then,
The thing you've got to remember, it was horses.
yeah, you have to think about how the Duke had had the benefit of the town in the past. He'd put money into it, he'd built New Street, hadn't he? So,
It was called New Street, it became Victoria Street after the
yeah. So you can see how he was investing himself before the
Oh
sale.
yes,
Yeah.
There were quite a few new buildings. The Shambles was built.
Devonshire Arms.
And in the catalogue, it quite proudly said newly built stone building.
Yeah.
So you know he has been waiting.
Yeah.
But equally, there were what we would consider marketplace. Building sites
Yeah.
in the sale.
Yeah.
Where the Wetherby House and the 3 legs on was a building site.
Yeah. So in the past previous years, he'd been putting lots of money himself into the town. So it's quite strange that he suddenly decided he had to sell up.
I can't really comment on that because I just don't know the conversion rate.
No.
But I know the figure because I was talking to kids at school.
Yeah.
It was 168,771. That's the figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the figure that's handwritten into the sale catalogue that we've got facsimiles of.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you multiply that by to get a 2024 figure.
Yeah. Vic put the figure up on the screen, and it was a phenomenal amount of money.
Yeah, well, you take the Swan and Talbot,
Yeah.
that was £1,500.
Yeah.
You know, so when you say you spent a lot of money in town, probably it was less than £1,000 per property.
Yeah.
Which, considering old Chatsworth House and all the land around that, he owns, I think he still does own Bolton Abbey and all the moorlands around there,
Yeah.
and up to the Strid and Barden Tower and all that lot.
Yeah.
And I saw a documentary a while back, and I'm almost certain he's still got estates in Ireland.
Yeah. Right.
So, taken as a part of his empire, to the locals it was a lot of money to build New Street. But in his empire,
Yeah. It wasn't.
loose change
Yeah.
probably. Probably.
Yeah, I was talking to a lady who has the old deed for her property in Victoria Street.
Oh yeah.
And she was explaining how the layout of the building worked, and they were sold as pairs, and some of them were linked together with a passageway, a door between them, and then the new owners could maybe let off a part of downstairs,
Yeah.
but keep the upstairs on one half. And I was thinking about the social history side of it, how the people of the town have been quite at a time of stress, thinking, am I going to be able to afford to buy the house I've lived in all my life?
Yeah, I think what happened on the day is that they got auction fever.
Yeah.
And when the auctioneer was shouting out, you know, I've got £250, any more money? It's my house.
I've got to have it. Yeah. Whereas they might, in retrospect, have got a decent landlord, not the Duke of Devonshire, but the new landowner, and they might have been all right.
But the thing was, if they bought it themselves,
Yeah.
they've got to service that mortgage,
Yeah.
raise the money to pay it off.
Yeah.
You know, which might have been more than they were paying for rental in the first place. I mean, there's a wonderful story that's actually written up in the newspaper.
Where's the Unveil? Is it upstairs?
Upstairs, yeah.
Right, shall I go up then?
It's getting close, isn't it?
It is getting to it. But apparently a chap had rented a plot. It was called Ian Myers, so it must have been
Oh,
really
yeah.
nice guy.
Yeah.
And he
That's just up on the right on Deaton Road, isn't it?
That's
Beyond
right.
the Lidl.
Yeah. And apparently when the lot came up, he stood up and he said, I've been working on that plot for the last 20 years and I've converted it from nettles and briars and swamp into a garden. And I feel I've earned that with the sweat of my brow.
Yeah.
The auctioneer said, thank you very much. I'd now like to invite bids for this plot. And the bloke put his hand up and said £400 and then
That was it. Never gave anybody else a chance to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he worked his plot to get his own property. Yeah.
Very interesting, Ian. It's a marvellous document, and you've done
It is.
a, thanks for putting the work into it.
And
You and the
it's
team.
on sale at Kemp's Bookshop and all the places you find a good book like the Drovers.
Yes. Thank you very much for the plug. Cheers, Ian.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my job as chair of the Wetherby 200 committee to thank you all for coming to witness this unveiling of a plaque to commemorate the event. And we have the Lord Lieutenant of West Yorkshire, Aidan Wilson. Is that correct title?
It is.
It is, yes. Who is going to say a few words.
My mother called me Edmund.
Would you do the honour of saying a few words for Unveiling?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, Chair Ian, and friends. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today on this really, really significant day in the life of this wonderful town. So I should perhaps explain my role, first of all. So my name's Ed Anderson. I have the honour and privilege of being the Lord Lieutenant of West Yorkshire. Every county in the United Kingdom has a Lord Lieutenant who's appointed by the monarch to be their personal representative in the county. So I have all sorts, you can imagine, all sorts of amazing, pleasant duties, hosting members of the royal family when they visit the county, presenting awards, and occasionally unveiling plaques. So absolutely delighted to be here today. Some of you may know that my wife Heather and I actually live not very far away, and so it's a particular delight to be here today. So I know Wetherby pretty well, and just so pleased when I heard about this event. So it's incredible really to think about what happened 200 years ago when the Duke of Devonshire decided to sell his land in these plots, and those events of 200 years ago really started to shape the town that we know today. And what a great town it is. I'm always very struck by the great sense of pride that people have in this town, and a great community spirit as well. And that obviously comes from the people of the town, but it also comes and is driven by those who take on leadership roles in the various organisations, and particularly the voluntary organisations that make this town so vibrant. So I haven't got a complete list in my mind, but whether it's the Civic Society, the Wetherby in Blue, the Lions, all the other organisations that sort of knit together to produce this fantastic community spirit, I salute all of you who take those voluntary roles. And I salute everyone who's been involved in bringing this event together. You know, what a tragedy it would be if it wasn't marked, and of course it should be marked in the way that we're doing, but it doesn't happen without an awful lot of work from a number of people. So I particularly pay tribute to the committee that have worked so hard to put this together. So now, it's time that I unveil the plaque. The last time that the late Duke of Edinburgh came to West Yorkshire was about 10 years ago, and he did the official opening of the police training centre at Cargate near Wakefield. And he was an elderly man, but really very fit. And he walked up these steps with no railings or anything, unveiled the plaque, and then walked down completely unaided, and everyone sort of holding their breath. But he wasn't going to have anyone, you know, holding his hand or anything. But before he unveiled the plaque, he said, "You are now going to witness the world's most experienced plaque unveiler," which I thought was a lovely line. I have unveiled a few plaques, but I was nowhere near the world's most experienced plaque unveiler. But congratulations, Wetherby 200, congratulations to everyone who's involved, and everyone who makes Wetherby such a great place. Here we go.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today. There is still much more going on. There is another talk at 2 o'clock, and also between 2 and 4 you're very welcome to go to the bathhouse at Jubilee Gardens, where they're serving delicious cakes. Another guided walk as well takes place in the front of the town hall at 3 o'clock. So thank you so much, everybody.
So is this going to go outside somewhere? Yeah. People are taking photos of